Creativity within constraint, or really creativity knows no bounds. My name's Scott Bowman, and I am the owner of Integrated Design Energy Advisors, otherwise known as Idea BuildWorks. This presentation and program was presented in February of 2015 to the Waukee CAPS program, which is the Center for Advanced Professional Studies. This particular group is oriented on engineering, but also includes architecture and the built environment as well. Also, we had a different strand of the CAPS program, the Business, Technology, and Communications group that actually did this video. So almost all the video past these first few slides was developed and processed and was participated by high school students. I am very passionate about the idea that we can be creative within constraint, and in fact that we should look at that as an opportunity, not as some kind of limit. And we need to get past this idea that budgets and location and time should limit the way we can do or frustrate us in how we can solve problems. And I feel using Lego as a way to take this rectilinear brick and then show people that they can make a difference and they can come up with solutions that are still creative, quite beautiful, and meet the expectations of our clients. So this type of thing, while this is a group of high school students, really could apply to adults or any other professionals in just about any field. And I've successfully presented this in many different venues and had this kind of reaction that's both fun. You're playing with Lego, you're building with Lego, you are interacting, it's very tactile learning, but you are also understanding that creativity doesn't have to be limited, the design doesn't have to be limited, and that we should look and embrace the idea of constraint because we've got to deal with it anyway. So today we're going to talk about creativity within constraint. As Joe said, I'm Scott Bowman. I'm actually a professional engineer, and I worked for a large multidiscipline engineering firm, not unlike Shive Hattery. It was KJW Engineering Consultants, but we didn't have architects. We had all the same disciplines. Did that for 30 years, and then I retired in June to pursue my real passion, which is Legos. No, I mean, it's sustainability. And I now have broadened my voice, and kind of later after this exercise, I'm going to talk about sustainability and what sustainability looks like in buildings and give you at least a taste of what that can look like, and it's pretty exciting. So since you've already started, I want you to build a tower. A couple of rules. First of all, you can't stand on a chair, okay, especially these. You have to have the plate on the table, and it cannot extend outside. And no, you don't have the bricks I have at home. That was actually an exercise. I'm on the board and was one of the founders of the Iowa Lego user group, and we have a weekly challenge, and this one was to build a tower on one of these plates, and I got a little carried away with that. So that's just right at about 3 feet in height. And it's incredibly fragile. I tried to take it to the science center and basically had to rebuild it just because it works with gravity, but it doesn't work very much else. So you have 10 minutes. Go. Done. Now it's time for the evaluation. So first of all, we'll get a picture of you with your builds, and then We are going to measure the height. We are going to measure the tipping height, which I am non-protestable. I am the decision on the tipping height, and you'll see everyone should have their hard hats for that. And then we need the data. Okay, so start measuring them and start the data. Well, Cooper, so 3.8 bricks per inch with a 50, almost 50 inches. I'll tell you how bad you got beat by a 14-year-old in a minute. But first of all, okay, so we've kind of established highest, but were they efficient? Most of them they were well into the 10, 8 bricks per inch. Was it stable? Any of them? Yours was. Yours was. Right? Until it broke. Was it balanced? We had several that the base is where it broke, especially our 4-inch tipping height. And also, why didn't you ask me how many bricks I could afford? I asked you to build a tower. You never asked me how many bricks I wanted. What kind of budget did I have? You didn't even ask, what the criteria was. You just started building. You didn't discover what that criteria was. You didn't even ask. I heard a couple of questions, saying it's a competition. You guys decided it was a competition. Nobody asked. Nobody asked what that is. With an architect and an engineer, we need to understand what the criteria is. What are the constraints? It's been a very long time, like since I started my career, I've never met one that had an unlimited budget. None of them have unlimited time. So the first issue is understand the problem. The problem may or may not be a building. How are you going to be measured? You need to understand how your client understands success. Who decides this success? Me. I'm the owner. They get to decide the success. You didn't know all the criteria. You didn't know who was setting the criteria. You probably guessed it was me. You need to understand the constraints. So all of these things are what you as professionals, especially as design professionals, need to discover. You need to get this information, and the more of it you have, the earlier, the better the result is. So, we're going to try this again. We're going to do round 2. Same rules, same materials as before, but now I'm going to tell you the constraints. And you probably got the idea a little bit by what we were measuring. First of all, build it as high as possible. That's one of my criteria. I want height. I don't have the hair, but I'm Donald Trump today. I just want height. But I don't have Donald's money. So I need to use the fewest bricks practical. So you have to be efficient. I get to tell you whether you succeeded or not on tipping. So from a ranking, I've just told you as high as possible, then as the fewest bricks, then it has to be stable. That is the criteria that I am measuring you, and this time no teams. But if it breaks, as our 4-inch friends learned. Stop building, by the way. That's gaining an advantage. If it breaks, that's your tipping height. Frankly, that's when you'd get sued, right? Hopefully nobody got killed. But everybody needs training, okay? So I'm going to give you a couple of secrets. They're not big secrets. The first one is the secret to Lego is overlapping brick. So this just shows you that idea that you can overlap the bricks or they'll just fall apart. I think several of the towers saw that on the upper part. Stacking bricks is fast, but also think about how many bricks there are in that. There's 2 bricks at each level. So now there's a technique I call building with air. You don't necessarily have to have every brick filled in. Our structures are built with air. Our buildings are. This is another way you can build with air. Now this used the same number of bricks as the one that was just 2 by 2, but do you think this might be a little more stable? Because the base is wider. Also, think about alternates. Square isn't always the most rigid structure. So think about alternate shapes. Think about how that might help you, especially on the tipping challenge. And then, how do you make something round out of Lego? Of course, this has nothing to do with it. It's just something I always do, and I like it. So, think about the constraints. Think about, now we're serious. I want a tall tower with the fewest bricks that's stable. Go. So put your name, and you can ignore the phone number. Okay. Then I'll come around and do tipping. That's 13. Well, I will take James out. James was ranked 8th. So basically 3.8 was the number to beat. Does everybody remember what the 14-year-old's number was? Anybody? 2.1. Isn't that amazing that that stood? She was the daughter of an engineer at Rockwell Collins, which if you are in First Lego League, or they don't take names even, they just kick. So what did we learn about this? That Lego's harder than it looks? So first thing is, discover before you proceed with design. Ask questions. I often am asked why I was successful, and I always say it's because I was curious. I like to know how my clients make their money. How do they work? How do they do things? Because often I'll find out that the issue isn't related to engineering. It's some other problem that I might be able to help them with. You need to understand how to measure, how does your client, because frankly that is the only person that matters, how do they measure success? Creativity, I don't feel is constrained. It's just our perception. To me, we can be just as creative within this criteria as we can otherwise. And in fact, I really push back on both my young engineers that I've worked with, that I've mentored over the years, and frankly, many of the architects I've worked with, that if that is how you view your constraints, you're never going to be happy. What you have to be happy with is, did you find a creative solution to that particular problem, that particular constraint? Everything we do in the built environment is no different than anything else we do. We are constrained by budget, schedule, and location. Sometimes we're in the middle of an urban area and you're not going to be able to build outside that block, and that block might be facing east, which is absolutely the worst case for daylighting or any other strategy we might use to make it sustainable. So everything we do has constraints, and frankly, time tends to be the largest constraint, because I like to say that when I was hiring engineers, I like to hire engineers that had a life. They had something that was outside of engineering, because those are the ways you connect with your clients, is by being curious and being interested.